As the Chinese authorities continue a brutal crackdown in Xinjiang, the northwest region of China that is home to the Uighur Muslims, Islam has been one of the main targets. Major mosques in the major cities of Kashgar and Urumqi now stand empty. Prisoners in the camps are told to renounce God and embrace the Chinese Communist Party. Prayers, religious education, and Ramadan fast are increasingly restricted and banned. Even in the rest of China, Arabic text is being stripped off from the public buildings, and Islamophobia is being tacitly encouraged by the party authorities. At the same time, China is trying to stoke Islamophobia among Europeans to justify and even export its model of locking up their Muslim minorities as the troubling crackdown continues to grab global attention. Beijing sees its crackdown on Uighur Muslims as counter-terrorism measure and claimed the camps are free vocational training that make life colorful. Lawmakers and international organizations are increasing pressure on China to stop these practices. But Beijing is not only ignoring their critics, but even trying to get them to follow their lead. Over the past few months, China has, through official statements and editorials in state media, cited Islamic terror attacks in Europe to justify and promote its Xinjiang policy. Last month, the country's state-run Global Times tabloid ran an editorial accusing Europe of hypocrisy in their criticism of China's human rights record. It even suggested that European countries discuss with China how it can learn from Beijing's model of suppressing Muslim minorities. The writer, I. June, says Europe may have overlooked its own troubles and singled out Britain, France, and Germany as countries with large Muslim populations and which are, according to J. June, vulnerable to terrorist and extremist threats. Instead of judging China condescendingly, Europe might need to sit down and discuss with China how to figure out their common challenges, I said. In September 2018, Li Shijun, a spokesman for China's State Council Information Office, also cited terrorist attacks in Brussels and Paris carried out by the Islamic extremists over the past 3 years to hit back at Western critics. Peter Irwin, a project manager at the World Uighur Congress in Munich, told Business Insider, I think China's stepping into Islamophobia that does certainly exist in the West, but what we are witnessing in China is not merely Islamophobia. It's the forced assimilation of entire ethnic group based on historic notions of Chinese superiority. China only uses Islamophobic rhetoric retroactively as a means of gaining support from its own domestic population. Emily Rahala, the Washington Post former China correspondent, dismissed the Global Times criticism of European critics as Twitter trolling, but warned that its policy of detaining Muslims to counter terror is the actual position of the Chinese government right now. China's policies of attacking countries that criticize its own human rights issues is not new, and it does not seem to be working either. In fact, Western countries are ramping up their actions against China over the Uyghur issue. This month alone, Reuters reported that 15 Western ambassadors in Beijing were seeking a meeting with Shen Shuanggu, the Chinese official believed to have masterminded the Xinjiang crackdown, to demand an explanation over Chinese Xinjiang crackdown. Last month, the European Parliament also issued a motion calling on China to immediately end the mass arbitrary detention of Uyghur Muslims, close all the camps, and allow free, unhindered access for journalists and international observers, so Xinjiang promised. Irwin told Business Insider, China's consistent refrain in response to allegations of human rights abuses has been to point the finger back at its own accusers and remind them that they too have their own problems. This line of argumentation is not at all convincing. Although it is true that abuses of the right exist throughout the world, you cannot paper over your own record through returned accusations, Irwin added. If this were the case, all states would accept bad behavior and nothing would change then.